Welcome everybody to my podcast, Big Little Small Talk. I'm Megan O'Hara-Sullivan and I love to talk, but I also love to listen. If you're new here, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, I'm Megan O'Hara-Sullivan and we're on Big Little Small Talk. Today I'm interviewing a man who's got a name that sounds a little bit to me like it's a drink, Tom Walker. It's not a drink, is it, Tom?
It's not. Maybe one day it will be.
It could be. Now, Tom, you and I met because you do a really interesting job. You work for OzHarvest, and I want to talk a lot about OzHarvest and the work that you do. But just as we were setting up here, you said, oh, no worries, I have my own podcast. I know all about recording into microphones and things. Tell me about your podcast. What's it called?
It's called Grundle Bundle, and it's just my best friend and I. We get together on a fortnightly basis, sit down, we'll have a couple of drinks and just record our conversations effectively. It all came from sitting out on the deck on a summer afternoon with a cold drink and thought, we should record this. No one will want to listen to it, but we're going to record it and put it out there just in case.
So do you do any prep work together where you think this is what we should talk about, or you just freewheel it?
A little bit of both. It's mostly observational, so if we come up with, or if we find anything throughout the time between recordings, I always keep a note on my phone, and then he'll have his notes written up. We've got a whiteboard, so we're trying to be a little bit more proficient at it, but we're not getting there yet. And then the best part of it comes when it's all just off the cuff, and we'll start out with a topic and just get completely distracted. So.
And you're riffing, and is it a funny podcast, or is it
we
more
like
philosophical?
So.
Or
it's got vaguely philosophical before, but we like to think it's just a bit of fun.
Right. Grundle Bundle.
Grundle Bundle.
Grundle Bundle.
Yeah.
And where do we find Grundle Bundle?
So we're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, anywhere basically that you can find a podcast. We do upload the videos to YouTube just as a blank video, so anyone who wants to watch the podcast or listen to it in the background that way.
Oh my goodness, I'm dealing with a professional. You probably shouldn't have told me that. It's a bit unnerving. So here I was thinking that you're a drink and a nice highball, but now you're a professional podcaster.
Well, I wouldn't say professional yet. Maybe one day.
And are you completely addicted to your stats? Like you're looking at who's listening, what age group they are, from what part of the world they are? Not saying that I do
yes
that or
and
anything
no.
like that.
Yes and no. The website that we use to host our podcast does give us all of our stats. And my suspicion is that we've got a pretty broad spectrum of countries. My suspicion is that that's due to VPNs. So, there's places like Pakistan, Greece, Italy, Spain, Turkey. And there might only be one or two listeners there. But my suspicion is that that's where that comes from. The majority of them are, it says, from America. And I feel like that's probably because of the way Spotify works. That because it's all hosted overseas, it skews the data. So I'm hoping that the more we get into YouTube and that area, we'll be able to actually analyse the data a little better.
Interesting. VPNs, eh? I need to get onto it. Whatever that is, I'm getting onto it straight away. The VPNs. Do you listen to podcasts yourself?
Absolutely do.
What do you listen to?
Mostly comedy podcasts. There's one that's like a Dungeons and Dragons roleplay podcast that's quite interesting to listen to. Rather than being able to see everything that's going on, you rely on hearing it.
That's the beauty of radio, isn't it? And podcast, it's all up in your imagination. They say it's the most visual medium.
That's exactly right, and it takes a lot of skill to do that properly.
Yeah.
So.
Are you aware, because you're videoing it, does that change things for you, do you think?
We haven't quite got to videoing it yet, and I think it will. When you're able to insert visual gags as well as part of it, that's very much our style of humour, so I think that'll play quite solidly into it. But just the pressure of being on camera, as it stands, when you're not recording it or not videoing it, you can make all sorts of weird faces, and it's easy, if you have to burp mid-sentence, you just sort of lean away from the microphone and you can sort of hide it pretty well. But once that's on camera, and I feel like the two of us won't care so much. We're not.
What sort of things do you talk about? Sport a lot?
Not a lot of sport. I'm big into sport, but Adam isn't. It's mostly just sort of anything that comes up. There's a lot of video games.
Video games.
Video games is pretty big for us. We're trying to get in. We enjoy playing it, and we'd like to get in and do a little bit more content based around that as well.
What's your favourite video game?
I think it's a game called The Elder Scrolls Skyrim. Just an open world roleplay game. Came out in 2011, and I've put hundreds and hundreds of hours into it.
Now look, Tom, I always pride myself on being good with the small talk.
Yeah.
I've got nothing on that. I can't even think of another question to ask you about.
Oh, that's fine.
About that. So let's go on to your work, which is, as I said before, how I met you. You're working for OzHarvest. What exactly is OzHarvest?
So OzHarvest primarily is a food rescue charity. Our purpose is to go around to food donors, whether they be Woolworths, who's probably a major donor. We've got some small greengrocers, and there's some local farms who are contributing as well. And we collect food that they either want to donate or are unable to sell anymore. So long as it's still in, condition that's fit for us to eat, we'll collect it and then deliver it to local charities.
Tom, is it food that is fresh food or packaged food, or it's not like leftovers from dinner parties or that sort of thing, is it?
It's mostly fresh, pre-packaged food as well. We have had various times where meals have been cooked, whether it be for a Christmas party or OzHarvest have their own kitchens where they do cooking classes, and then those meals are then donated as well.
And tell me, who sets up, like, I presume Woolworths are, you go there, do you go there every day?
Yep.
You go there every day?
Yep.
And do Woolworths put the food aside for you? How does it work?
Yeah, so when Woolworths are doing their quality control checks each day, if they notice any damaged stock, anything like that, most of our stores now have set areas that they will allocate to the stock that's to be donated for us. Most of the fruit and veg departments will have an area, and then anything that we won't take of that goes to their farmer bin, so they try to keep that pretty close. And a lot of that's just through constant communication and refining the process. When I first started, everything was just put in shopping trolleys and left near the loading dock. And then we'd come in, sort through that, and there seemed to be a lot more waste that way. Whereas now, we've been able to refine the system for them. Some of them will put meat in a deli freezer. So then we know exactly where it is. We just come in. We're not interrupting their day. And ours flows much smoother as well because we're already in that routine.
And it's not just like all sort of, rotten apples and meat that's disintegrating or anything like that, is it? What are the rules around that sort of thing?
So everything we do is based around the food safety standards. So it has to fit within limits. Fresh fruit and veg, so long as it looks still, reasonably visually appealing. Woolworths have quite high standards on that, so that plays into our hand as well. If it doesn't meet their standards, then it comes to us with the next port of call. Anything meat or fresh, if it's within its use-by date, we can take it while it's still fresh. And if it's frozen on or before its use-by date, we can take it 3 months after.
Okay. What was the phrase that you used to me when you said go through these boxes here or go through this trolley, and you said use this standard?
It's so mostly visual. If you would eat it yourself, then it's fine to take. We try to keep the food that looks good because we don't want the people on the receiving end to feel like they're getting charity. We want it to feel like they're just getting a grocery box, or however the charities decide to distribute it. We still want it to look good and not like they're getting seconds.
I saw on the OzHarvest website, they say rescuing quality excess food that would otherwise go to waste. So you say about the charities. So who are your charities? Give me an idea of what sort of places you're taking this to.
So we've got a few schools, primary schools in the area, whether they be for kids' breakfasts or lunches. Some of the schools will send boxes home with families who are less fortunate. So that's really nice. The biggest ones are probably community centres around the area. So Wilsonton Heights, Harlexton, East Creek. So we deliver to them a couple of times each week. Teen Challenge is another one who receives from us. Tony's Kitchen. I think there's about 20 in total that we deliver to locally. We still have some on the waiting list, so once we can secure that extra food, we'll be able to bring more people on board as well.
So these charities know that OzHarvest. Do you have any competition, or is it just really OzHarvest who are doing this similar sort of thing?
Yeah, it's not competition per se, but there's other organisations out there. So Act Care in town, Second Bite is another organisation that do it, and I think they tend to deal with with Coles, sorry, and I think they just have a different method of their operation, whereas ours are from the donor direct to the charity. Theirs might run slightly differently.
Now, the biggest sort of shock to me was the amount of bread and bread type products. There's just huge, big, not just trolleys full of them, but these big vertical things that the Woolworths give to you. And so I said to you at the time, why wouldn't they calculate better to work out what they're going to use, that all of this is wastage? But is that just, it goes up and down, I guess? It
really does fluctuate. Time of year is very dependent on it. We find back to school, we will get very little bread. It's a staple that everyone's sort of buying in that couple of days before school goes back. And then otherwise it sits fairly stable for us. So there's a fairly constant amount of bread out there.
Yeah. And you started to say before about the charities. I know when I was out with you the last time, we went to the Harlexton Neighbourhood Centre, and they make up boxes for people to come, and it'll have a loaf of bread and some fresh vegetables and some tin food and different things.
Yep.
But we also went to the soup kitchen. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so the base services run the basement soup kitchen. We go there twice a week, and they will largely use the produce that we provide them to cook lunch every day. We'll provide them bread, which the people who are coming to access their services can take away with them. That way they've got something to have on hand. It's really nice to see when the meals are being cooked for these people. It's we're not often there around service time, but then it's also nice to see, okay, well, they've taken a mountain of this type of produce. I wonder what they're actually going to cook with it.
So how do they decide? Like, do you just give them stuff, or do they come out and have a look at what you've got and they say, okay, we can make a big bolognese out of this, or what? How does that work?
The way it normally works for me currently is that the chefs there will come and have a bit of a look. I tend to know that they're looking for the basics.
Onions.
Yeah, onions, potatoes, carrots, just those sort of staples. If we get a large enough amount of something else, they'll take it. If we get some Asian greens, they might use it to make a stir fry. So they tend to, from what I've garnered, they tend to have a fairly stable menu. And it's just things that they know they're going to get and they can work with. So it might be a pasta, might be a soup, particularly in winter, and they know that it's there and those ingredients are readily available. So I know that's what they're looking for. But then if I find something different, they're always interested in it.
And Tom, that day that you and I were there, they had this enormous saucepan full of sauce ready. And I think that they said that they serve 80 for lunch. Was that what you...
Yeah, I think they were saying between 75 and 110 some days. That's a lot of meals to be making. It's a lot of food every day.
You mentioned before about the food that the supermarkets have got the farm bin as well.
Yep.
But what would traditionally happen? Would all that food go to landfill, will it?
If it's not for the farmers who come through the stores, that's the way it used to go, yeah. Everything was just piled into the landfill skips. And they've brought in more initiatives since then, and since I've started with this. So they've got an organic compost bin. Any food product will go into that if the farmers won't come through. So we sort of get top priority. We'll come through, take what we can. We don't often take things like the lettuce leaves or the outers of cabbages or cauliflowers. So they'll normally get put aside into the green waste bins, and then the farmers will come through, take it home, feed their livestock, anything that they can't use will then go into composting now.
Right. So tell me about the how that relationship is set up. Like that relationship here with the Woolworths. I know we went out to Wilsonton, did we not?
Yep.
And going in through the back docks, I was always a bit confused about where we were.
Yep.
How does someone do it at a local level, or is that something that's done by OzHarvest at a sort of a state and federal level
In terms of setting up the donation.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of everything. So our state level, we have donor coordinators, and they will come through, and particularly with new ones now, they're the ones who go in and explain what we do, try to set up some sort of collection schedule. And then on the day-to-day, it's the drivers ourselves going through, having to build the relationships with these people. And it's sort of a refinement process. Some people will hold off on donating a certain food because they think if someone gets sick from it, it's going to come back on them. And that's really our job to come in and say, well, because we act under food safety standard, we take that on. So long as it's given in good faith, then there's no repercussions for them. We sort of take all that on board. And that's why we have to do our training in the food safety to understand what we can and can't take. And it's building those relationships every day. It's talking to the people in these departments. Yeah, it's nice to build a relationship and be able to see the improvements in the quality that we get.
I'll just remind the listeners that you're with me, Megan O'Hara-Sullivan, and we're on Big Little Small Talk. We're talking to Tom Walker today, who works for OzHarvest. Tom, when you say you're building the relationship, do you sometimes feel like you're just trying to stay out of their way, all those people at the back dock, and if you know that there's a truck's going to come up and you're going to be the guy? Or do you sort of feel like you have to be sufficiently grateful, I suppose?
It's a little bit of both. It depends, again, day to day. If you can see that they're short-staffed or there's 2 trucks waiting to come in and I'm at the loading dock, I try to speed things along a little bit more, but I don't think I've ever really felt like I'm in the road. Everyone seems to be quite appreciative of the work we're doing. It can be a little inconvenient at times, particularly short-staffed. They might have to stop what they're doing on the shop floor to come and let me in. But then they can go back to their work and I'll go and do mine. So they're not particularly hanging around having to, watch over my shoulder and watch the door. So most of them are pretty agreeable on that front. The truck drivers I've met have all been quite agreeable. They're happy to wait the 15 minutes that I'm in there until they get their chance at the dock. So
yeah, it's incredible. And you don't just get food either. The day that I was with you, we got a whole heap of plants. What would happen with those?
Yeah.
And flowers.
Flowers have become more common, which is really nice. It's a nice way for people to brighten up their home and not have to pay for them. They can be quite expensive. And just the benefit that comes from that. But the plants were a really interesting one. They were stock for a store that just weren't selling. They weren't getting sunlight, so they were starting to look a little bit sick, and they knew they weren't going to sell. And I'm always quite happy to pick up something like that, because there's plenty of people out there with a green thumb, and even if they don't have a green thumb, well, they're being donated a plant. If it survives, it does, great. If not, well, they gave it a shot. I hate to see any sort of waste, and those things are probably most likely to go to landfill. The plant and the soil it's in, not so bad, but the pot, it's just plastic building up in landfill, where if we can get that into someone's house and they're able to keep a plant alive, it's...
It's incredible. Can you tell the listeners that story about the kids and the broccoli?
Yeah. It was one afternoon at Rockville State School, just bringing in my regular delivery for them, boxes of fruit and veg and bread. And there was a couple of kids, they might have been on their lunch break, and they came up and they were just having a look at the boxes, and they were just so excited to see vegetables in there. They all get to take a piece home with them. And just seeing kids excited, about a head of broccoli. Because the thought then might be, well, they might get vegetables that night. It might be a novelty for them that they don't really see. So being able to see that just lightens your day. You're dealing with a fairly somber topic. So being able to find those little light moments and have some joy in it is very special.
Wasn't around the time that cauliflower were selling at $15 a head or something like that. They might have been, marketeers or something.
Yeah, it could have been. Lettuce at $11 a head. We were seeing plenty of them because people just couldn't afford to buy it. And that's one of the funny things I find. You might see a lamb leg that's been donated because no one wants to buy it because it's so expensive. And the people who can't afford it are the ones who end up receiving it. So it's nice to see that end of it all.
Yeah, isn't that incredible? That is such an amazing story. Now, you get a lot of volunteers. How does that work? Why do volunteers come? Who arranges that?
So the volunteers arrange it themselves largely. I've had a few who are coming through volunteering as part of their job seeker process. So instead of applying for so many jobs, they had allowance to do so many volunteer hours. But a lot of them, particularly now, are people who might be retired. They might just have a day off and they're interested in doing something and not just sitting at home. So I think if you just typed in, say, volunteer jobs Toowoomba or Queensland, OzHarvest tended to come up in that list. And they just apply, and then once they go through their little induction process, they just jump on and book themselves into the volunteer calendar.
So is it, for you, what's that like? You get a new person every day and you have to go through we'll just come over here, go through that trolley. Do you find it exhausting or do you like it?
A bit of both. If you get a big run of new volunteers, it can slow the day down a little bit, but there's always time in the day to do that. And it feels great to be able to educate people on the sorts of things that we do. But then we get our regular volunteers as well. So there's a couple of days each week where we get the same volunteer. And it's really nice to build that relationship with them as well. They get to a point where you can leave them to be, sort of autonomous. Say, all right, do you want to pack this one? I'm going to go on to this. And that really speeds the process up so we can be more efficient. But it's great to see the spectrum. So we get school-based volunteers. It was so great the times that I've had a school-based volunteer, we get to educate them in the hopes that, well, maybe they'll take that back to their friends and their school so we can spread the message around as well. Word of mouth is such a powerful tool.
And I read on the website too about this other initiative that OzHarvest has, and it's called Feast, isn't it? So students learn about the impact of food waste. Do you know much about that?
I know a little bit about it. It's a program that the teachers themselves deliver. The OzHarvest team will educate the teachers, and then they'll bring the program to their students. So it's a way to explain how we operate, but then a lot of other things related to food waste, how you can reduce it, how you can alleviate it, just different techniques in that area. I think that's the best way because the kids are the ones who are going to be dealing with it the most.
Now, today is a very exciting day, I read on the internet about OzHarvest because you've got a new CEO.
Yeah. I think...
Just today.
Yeah. So they announced it today. Ronnie Khan, who's the current CEO, the lady who started this whole venture, she's going to be sticking with the company.
But she's got an interesting name. Do you know what it is?
Her title?
Yeah.
I think it's Visionary Lead.
Visionary in Residence. I'd like to be a visionary in residence.
Yeah, it's...
Can you tell me the story about how Ronnie set it up? Do you know much about that?
I should know more. I used to know more. From memory, so she came from South Africa and had seen a lot of this inequality. And when she moved to Australia, from memory, she just wanted to do something to alleviate it. She had the ability, the time, and just the patience to set up this amazing organisation almost 20 years ago. I believe she said that it was 20 years ago this month we celebrate our 20th next year. But it was just her way to spread what she had around and to help people who may have been in a similar situation.
Tom, tell me about your journey with OzHarvest. How long have you been working for them?
I've just passed 3 years working for them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and what did you do before?
So before that, I was just working casually as a hospital cleaner.
And are you still working as a hospital cleaner?
I am still working as a hospital cleaner, trying to reduce my hours in that a little bit, just for that work-life balance. But during COVID, because I was casual at the time, all casuals were stood down in preference of the permanent staff. So I lost about 4 weeks of work. I wasn't sure what my future at the hospital looked like going forward after that. No one was really sure. So I started looking for other work. Just jumped online and saw an application for OzHarvest and sort of had to do a double take. I'd been following what they'd been doing since probably 2006.
Why is that, do you think? Like, I don't know that I had ever even heard of them before I came out.
I vaguely remember seeing something on one of the Friday night programs, whether it be Better Homes and Gardens or something like that, in that era. And it was just a little piece that they did, following them around and seeing what they were doing. The company's evolved quite a lot since then, but yeah, I had an interest in it even from then. And yeah, I just sort of had to count my lucky stars that this job came up at the right time, and I applied, and lo and behold, I got the job.
You just are the perfect personality for it, aren't you? And you feel as though you're doing good work too, don't you?
Absolutely. It's the best job I've ever had, hands down. I've had some great jobs, but the feel-good aspect of this, as well as, it's a hard work, manual labour job.
When you applied for the job, did you have to have some sort of truck licence to do it?
No, it was just a regular car licence.
Yeah.
So,
listen, that was the other thing I wanted to ask you about, is the truck and the fuel. Tell me about that. Who pays for that?
So the trucks are all primarily just donations. It costs, a certain amount every year to run each vehicle, and that includes drivers' wages. And often each year they have to find that money for each location or each vehicle. We do have major corporate sponsors like BP, Woolworths. Some of the councils have come on board. We have our regular donors, and then we get various national partners. We've had Heritage Bank previously. Currently, our current partner is Suncorp. So we get those people coming on board, and they'll say, we'll give you this much money, or we'll provide a vehicle for a year. They have to find that money every year. And then, the fuel is the same.
Yeah. And is that done, again, at a national level? You don't have to do it locally?
It's mostly state level.
Right.
So we have people in charge of finding those funds and... but you seem very connected into who they are, and you know who it is, and they're quite transparent internally with all of that sort of information. So we know who our national partners are. They don't often specify the dollar amounts or some of the smaller donors, but most of it is corporate sponsorship.
I'll just remind the listeners that they're on Big Little Small Talk with me, Megan O'Hara-Sullivan, and we're talking to Tom Walker, who works for OzHarvest. So, Tom, tell me about your upbringing. Were you born and bred Toowoomba?
Yeah, so born and raised here for the better part of 30 years. Spent a couple of years living in Brisbane, but then migrated back, and it's always been Toowoomba, I think.
Yeah. And do you come from a family who sort of do social justice, do charity work? Tell me about your mum and dad.
Not particularly. So mum, when I was born, was still working. She was in the army, and then transitioned out of that into more office type work, and spent the last part of her career as a paralegal. So that was an interesting side. And then, Dad has always been in the clerical admin sort of work. So it wasn't really any social justice angles. We were raised to be good kids, good people. And I feel like they succeeded quite well in that front.
Who else is in the Walker family? Do you have any brothers and sisters?
I have 2 older brothers and a younger sister.
Are any of those working in a sort of a charitable sort of work?
Not hugely. I have one brother works at a hospital, one works at a food wholesaler, and my sister she's a teacher aide at a primary school.
Yeah. With all of this work that you're doing, are you saving up for something? Like, is there an aspiration? Do you want to do something, buy something, go somewhere?
Ideally, a house. Went through a divorce, sort of came out of it with very little. And then, COVID, life got in the way. And I've ended up donating a lot of my money to different charity ventures that I've done. So, trying to build that back up. Eventually, I'd like to buy a house. And
tell me some more about donating your money to various charities. We're not talking like Sportsbet or something like that, are we?
No. So, Oxfam, I donated a pretty sizable amount to them. We were going to do the Trail Walker, which is just a charity hiking event in Brisbane, and it was 100 Ks in 48 hours. It ended up being cancelled, and they offered money back. I said, don't worry about it, just keep it, because someone else will be able to benefit from that more than me. Recently signed up to do the Mystery Box Challenge next year. So that's a Cancer Council fundraiser.
Tell me some more about the Mystery Box.
So the Mystery Box is run by Box Rallies. They do a few different ones each year. It's basically you buy a car that's 25 years or older, and then they tell you where you start and where you finish, and they won't tell you the route in between. But it's normally about 2,000 Ks of rough tracks. And yeah, it's a fundraiser for Cancer Council. It's a whole lot of fun. You get out there in this old car, and you're just driving these rough roads in a buddy group. And
do you get assigned the buddy group, or you go with a buddy group?
You get assigned. So you have yourself and a co-driver in your car, and then they will just auto-assign you a group. It'll normally have someone with, a reasonable level of mechanical experience and a first aider, and then otherwise it's just get in, have some fun.
Have you done that before?
I haven't. I've been interested in that for a little while as well, and
it sounds very much like that Variety Bash or something, doesn't it?
Yeah. It is a little bit like that. It's a bit more rough and tumble, I think, just out in the bush. I don't think their goal is to break as many cars as possible, but there's a fun aspect to that as well, where if your car breaks, well, you just have to bundle in someone else's car and keep ploughing on for the week.
Can we go back to the donating the money? So was that even before you started doing OzHarvest?
It was probably around the same time. I was living back at home with mum and dad. My expenses were relatively low. And then once I had two incomes, well, I had a lot more available cash. And I realised just how good I had it. There were so many other people who didn't. So I tried to do what I could.
What do you think the future's going to hold for you? What's the ideal job? Where would you love to be now that your life has sort of taken a change? So you did something else. You were a plumber. Is that right?
Yeah, I was a plumbing apprentice. I've worked retail. I've worked as a storeman. So I've worked, a huge spectrum of jobs. Haven't found anything that has stuck as well as OzHarvest. If I could, I'd love to get into the mediascape. Podcasting, YouTube, creating content like that.
For some sort of charity, or not really?
Primarily for me, but then that gives me the advantage. If I can make a sufficient income from it, then it's going to open up funds to be able to donate. I'd like to do charity events as part of that if I could. I feel like I'll probably stick with OzHarvest for quite a while as well. There's just a longevity that comes from this sort of career or employer. Everyone that I talk to have had other, high-paying, successful jobs beforehand. Then they come to OzHarvest, and there's just that joy that comes from turning up for work every day.
Well, do you know what I reckon, Tom? I reckon they should make you the ambassador, because you're such a good face of OzHarvest.
I certainly try.
Oh, just your genuine sort of love of the job, and the way you are when you get to the neighbourhood centres or to the, seeing the schools and things like that. It's just that lack of sort of fuss, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm going to go on to a couple of other questions.
Yeah.
My first one for you, Tom, is what made you smile today?
Turning up for work. It's probably the biggest thing. Just going and seeing these people that I see twice a week at a neighbourhood centre. It's a chance to catch up with people who I otherwise probably wouldn't interact with. I just wouldn't come across them in my day-to-day life. And just finding out how their day's gone.
Yeah.
That makes me smile every single day.
Do you think that the demand for what OzHarvest has are they telling you that they need more stuff because of the cost of living and
Absolutely,
the homelessness and things like that? Much more demand?
Yeah, demand has skyrocketed. It is. It's getting harder for people to live day to day. And if we have the ability to alleviate some of that, then we're going to do everything we can to get as much food and to help these people as much as we can.
Shy of stealing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. My second question for you, Tom.
Yep.
If you were a circus character, which one would you be?
I thought about this for a while, and I think I'd have to be the clown. Like, I love being fun and, making a bit of a fool of myself. I don't care about my own feelings towards it. I got no shame anymore, so I will do what I can to get a laugh and try to be the life of the party.
Yeah, well, why not, I guess? When you're left with, what are some other circus characters, I guess? I can't even think of any.
There's the ringleader.
The ringleader.
The lion tamer.
The bearded lady.
Yeah.
Well, we're going for the clown. All right. Now, you mentioned that you're divorced. I don't know whether I should be digging into there, but what if I ask you what's the worst pickup line you've ever heard?
This one took a little bit of time to work out, but I think the worst one I've heard is, "Are you an unpaid parking ticket? Because you've got fine written all over you."
Oh.
It's pretty bad.
Have you used that?
I have not. No. No. As soon as I heard that, I'm like, that's in the never to use pile.
Never to use pile.
Yeah.
Have you had any children, Tom?
I do. I have one son.
And what age is he?
7.
And you get to see him fairly often?
Not as often as I'd like. He lives out in St George, so that distance makes it quite difficult. But we do get to FaceTime every week and, see each other as often as we can be in the same location.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's great. All right. What is your favourite celebrity scandal?
That I really don't know.
Come on. You're not trying hard enough.
I don't follow much in the way of celebrity scandals. It's never something that's really interested me.
Right. Not like, Fergie and the toe sucking, or that was probably a bit before your era, I guess. Possibly.
If that had been part of my era, maybe, yeah.
You'd be following it.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, this question's probably a bit more your speed, I think. If life has taught me one thing, it's what?
The biggest thing I could come up with is the right things in life always take time. Be patient and good things will come to you. I know both times I've been out with you, I've been struck by your thoughtfulness. Yep.
And your... that's why I was surprised that you said that you'd be the clown, because you didn't strike me as that. You're much more, as I say, thoughtful and considered. So where did you get that piece of advice, or where did you read that? Or
that was just me thinking. So
read it to me again.
The right things in life always take time. Be patient and good things will come to you. So that I sort of draw that from OzHarvest. I'd had a period of time without work and wasn't particularly enjoying work, and then this came along. Best job I've ever had. New relationships. I was married for a number of years and it seemed great, but then it sort of broke down and wasn't so great. But then a relationship comes along that seems even better, or is even better. So it's that taking time. The older I get, the more I know what I'm looking for and the more I can appreciate everything. And you realise that this is definitely the right thing for me.
Yeah, that's lovely. So, Tom, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
33.
33, that's the golden age.
Yeah. Yep.
33. Well, you just do seem to have just such not an old head on a young shoulders, but you've done a lot in your time. I just wanted to ask you too, with being so happy in your job at OzHarvest, has that influenced your job at the hospital? Like, is it a different? Like, I would imagine when you're working with OzHarvest, you're sort of not that you wouldn't be treated with respect being a cleaner at the hospital, but it's a different vibe, I guess.
Yeah, it 100% is. People appreciate the work we do at the hospital, but we tend to be a little bit more invisible in the background, and I'm quite okay with that. Yeah, it's that silent appreciation. And then you get OzHarvest where the work you do is so visible, and people will come up and thank us in the street. You know, it's I'm not out searching for that, but it's such a nice feeling when you get it.
I understand. I really do. Yeah. And you're going to keep doing both jobs for the time being?
For the time being, try to find that right balance. You know, it's hard when you're working sometimes 8 shifts a week. You know, they can be 15-hour days. So it gets long, it gets draining. I'm glad that OzHarvest is the way it is, because I can come to work with positivity, even if I finished at the hospital 5 hours before. You got 4 hours sleep, enough time, you just sort of get in and go. And it's just refreshing.
That is seriously what you do. You'll finish a shift at the hospital, have 4 hours sleep, and go to work with OzHarvest.
Yeah, previously. I try not to do that anymore, but no, that's something I've definitely done.
I'm going to ask you my next question, and
Fire
it
away.
is in 3 words I am, and I don't want you to say a crazy cat for working so hard. So what are your 3 words? In 3 words I am.
This was another tricky one. I could come up with 2 quite easily, and I had to actually ask my girlfriend for her advice on the third, and we came up with kind, caring, and selfless.
Yes, I think so. I agree. Definitely.
Yeah.
Can you reveal a little bit about your girlfriend? What?
So we started dating about 6 months ago, but we've known each other for 20 odd years. Grew up dancing together. So
now tell me about that, please.
So I danced tap dancing and jazz ballet for 11 years here in town.
Tom, you've been holding out on me. Tell me about your dancing career.
So I started 94 and 95. My cousin was at the same dancing school, and I saw it and I thought, hey, I really want to do that. So Mum and Dad got me in, and just loved it from the get-go. It became a bit too much towards the end of high school, which is why I ended up giving it away. It did take a physical toll on my body, which is unfortunate, but I just loved it.
Right, so it was tap and
jazz ballet.
Ballet.
Classic jazz.
Were you like the only boy there?
When I first started, there was 1 or 2 others, and then I went probably 7 years as the only boy in my class, and then there was 1 other came in towards the end as well.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's the physicalness of it, makes you feel so great. But
yeah.
And do you still do anything to do with dance?
Not hugely. I'd love to get back into, say, ballroom dancing, something that's a bit less impact physically. But yeah, I'd love to get back into that and find something. It's a bit more my pace.
Yeah. We've got a friend who's a good ballroom dancer. He grew up in Warwick, and whenever we have a dinner party, that after the dinner's finished, the tables go back. Everyone's lining up to dance with Philip because he's so fabulous to dance with. Yeah. So with the dancing, you said you don't do any dancing at all now, or
No,
do you go and see dancing? Or
I will quite happily go and see dancing. I think in a couple of weeks there's a show on at the Empire, so we're off to see that.
Yeah. What sort of show is that?
I think it's a dance schools concert, so it's their annual concert.
Okay. And you started to say about meeting your girlfriend at dance classes.
Yeah,
you had danced together as 11-year-olds?
Yeah, it was probably around then. She was a couple of grades below me, so we sort of knew of each other, but we weren't dancing together in the same classes. See, it's funny, just the full circle that came, that eventually 20 years later we'd end up dating. So.
Yeah. And do you go to like the golf club and dance or anything like that now?
Not really. We probably should, but working so much makes it quite difficult to find that time.
And is she doing any dancing?
Yeah, so she dances with the Toowoomba Fizzy Club. So,
Lovely.
yeah.
What a great story.
So she's
A,
continued.
finding a man who dances.
Yeah.
B, who still dances. C, who wants to dance.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. Have you got special dancing shoes?
Not anymore. Yeah, grew up with tap shoes just strewn around the house. But not anymore. I think I will. When I get back into it, I'll absolutely have my dance shoes.
You need the dancing shoes.
Yeah.
All right. Now, I don't know whether you would follow the royal. Do you have someone who you could say is your favourite royal?
This one it actually came to me fairly quickly. Harold Bluetooth.
Whoa.
So he's a Danish king and unified a whole bunch of Scandinavia in the 10th century.
And how do you know about that?
I love my Viking history, just Scandinavian history. I love history in general, but yeah, since leaving school, I tried to learn as much as I can, in particular around that.
What's your sources? How do you learn stuff?
Internet mostly. Just
what are you looking up? Scandinavian Viking kings.
Yeah, you can do just online history courses through it, and yeah, they'll teach you various things about, it might be military history or nobility history, even just the culture. So it's just a lot of jump on Google and find the right sources and just read.
What's his name again?
Harold Bluetooth.
Bluetooth.
He's also the reason we have Bluetooth called Bluetooth.
Oh, tell me that story.
So the symbol for Bluetooth that we all know pretty well is actually derived from the runes of his name. So it's H and B put together creates Bluetooth. And they named it that because it was a way to unify all of our devices through Bluetooth. And they just associated that with his ability to unify so much of Scandinavia.
What a fascinating story. Tom, you're an amazing guy. All right, now, music. You love your music?
Love music,
You love
absolutely.
your music. Do you play any music?
Used to. So I grew up playing trombone and saxophone. And then I tried to teach myself guitar, got a bit slack and didn't. And then I've been trying to teach myself drums as well. So
All from YouTube again?
Sort of YouTube, sort of just myself. Bit of freeform.
I did meet a boy the other night who had won a bursary from the Empire, and he plays the double bass, and he taught himself to play the double bass on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which seems incredible.
Yeah, it's such an amazing resource that
yes.
we don't associate it often with the education side.
The good things.
Yeah.
Well, you can learn how to change the chain on your chainsaw, or how to translate something into a different language.
Yeah.
All right, so you play a little. You listen to a lot of music?
A lot of music, yeah.
Okay. What about... Well, this is a perfect question for you. What's the song that can't keep you off the dance floor?
I think it has to be Sandstorm by Darude. Just a bit of a ravey song, just a bit of fun. It's nothing in my regular spectrum, but whenever it comes on, my friends and I will just all get up and just start dancing. So.
Well, I hope Leroy can find that, because I've never even heard of it.
Yeah.
But that won't surprise you. Tom, I've run out of time, but I've just really appreciated spending time with you, the other times that we've spent together and today, and hearing your story. And I think you're on a journey that is... I'd love to catch up with you in another 10 years' time and see where your thoughtfulness and heart has taken you. And I really thank you for being my guest on Big Little Small Talk.
No, thank you for having me.
That's it for this week. Thanks for joining me on Big Little Small Talk. I hope you can make the time to join me next week. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favourite podcast app.